Hey everybody, welcome back. Difference Maker Podcast, hosts Matt and Chris Calderoni. It's been a bit. It's been a couple weeks since we put an episode out. We had some good stuff happening here at Molliteum. Excited to talk about today, but it's been a good couple weeks to really build.
Been a good couple weeks, and you got to go to the All-Star game.
NBA
All-Star game.
Yeah.
How was
Fun
that?
experience. Good experience. Just a lot of good stuff that came from it. Like big shout out to our athlete, Lauri Markkinen, who's had a fantastic, not just year, but like if people really know Lauri and what he's been through and what he's gone through, like from what we've seen since, seeing him in Chicago and helping him and guiding him a little bit in Chicago there. And now to this point, it's like, it's funny because I think a lot of people don't understand how much goes into this all-star game for a lot of these players. I don't think a lot of people understand what it really takes to get there. And I don't think people understand, too, how long some build until they eventually get there. Like the all-star game's the peak or the tip of the iceberg, if you will, right? It's like There's so much stuff that goes into that. There's so much stuff that goes into discovering yourself, finding out your strengths, hiring the right people, bringing the right team in. And it's a full circle moment when you get there and you see a guy like him who's been through everything he has and, didn't really have his way in Chicago. I would argue a little bit where they didn't understand him at best. He goes to Cleveland, starts his come up, and then finds his team who, shout out to his agents, Mike Lilchitsky at SIG Sports, did a fantastic job at getting him in there and finding the right situation. And now he's found himself a place where he can really flourish and really do his thing. And it's like, you look at a lot of these athletes who are essentially creators, like we talk about, they are artists in their own way. Mm-hmm. It's somebody who really started to accept Lauri and what he's all about. And I know that it's something that's big for him. So going to that game, it was awesome. It was awesome. Like, I know it sounds, obvious, but the NBA just does it good. They do it good. Like entertainment's top. The people there are like, it's an event, it's a spectacle. And to just be able to go there and experience that and take it in, I mean, needless to say, it felt like my own experience as much as it felt for Lauri, right? So it was good. It was a great moment to see. His family was on point. Everybody was happy for him. He had a great time. He did his thing, got to participate in the 3-point, did whatever he had to do, and now he's back doing his thing for the team. At a big night last night with a 43-point night himself. And it's like the motivation's obviously not going anywhere, which is great. So I'm excited to watch him and the Jazz for the rest of the season because I think there's a lot of good stuff they're going to do.
I got to say, I think my favorite part of some of those pictures that you got, if you guys want to check it on our Instagram, some of those pictures, but you were a short king in those pictures next to him. I always feel short to you.
In our family, I'm tall, right? So
it was fantastic to see those.
Standing next to a 7-foot behemoth whose parents are pretty much as tall as him. Like his mother even towered over me, and it's like crap. Like I can't even get some kind of a win on that part. So it was good.
Wild, but that's good. I'm glad you had a good time. Good entertainment, good food. I'm sure everything was great.
Honestly, like even the halftime, if you want to call it, show, like when they had their second quarter break. Post Malone's there, all these guys, like it was a great time. Like it was a good show put on.
Good.
The who's who goes. It's, if you can ever, I'll say it like this, any ambitious person out there that really wants to really just see some stuff in life, go buy a couple tickets to the All-Star game. I know they're expensive, but go do it. It's an eye opener. You feel in the presence of people who get it. At least I did. And it's like, you see a lot of these cool personalities that are there. And it was a treat to be there. It was a treat to be around some of the best in the league. It was cool to see everything, even with LeBron and his honors and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Malone and all those guys. It's like, it was just a great time. It was a great time. So I'm excited. Hopefully next year, Lowry, I'm positive will have a return on that, but hopefully we get to go for the whole weekend. I didn't get to go because I was actually in Mexico for my honeymoon and then came back and had a day to break and then was off on a plane the next morning at 5 a.m. for the game. So at least I got to see the game. That was nice. And definitely a lot more to come. So I'm excited. Super excited. But going into that, we've got a good topic for today. We really, Chris and I were discussing it a lot too, and we were saying this whole thing behind high performance and the way that they are and the way that, high performers do things and so on, it's a fast-moving world, right? Like, you're constantly being asked, if you're in the business world, to complete some kind of a project. And then in the athletic space, you've got a game the next day, and then you have a day off, and then probably another game the next day, or you got training every single day. Like, it is a world where you have to fight to slow down.
Oh, 100%. Even students, right? Like even stuff that's going on now, everything can be done at home. Mm-hmm. You're never really having time to work invades your bedroom, right? Yeah. So it's like, with a topic like this on slowing down, anything is really high performance now, especially in this part of the world. Like, there is no slow. Mm-hmm. When is there slow? When you're retired.
And that's a great point. And I think too with that, there's this big stigma behind move fast, high performance, move fast. They move fast. And it's like, yeah, all right, but let's look at some of the top performers in the world, okay? So I'm talking like guys like a Jay-Z. I'm talking guys like Steve Jobs was, a Tim Cook, a Jeff Bezos. You want to look at athletes, let's look at LeBron James. Let's look at guys like that. It's like, these are not people of haste, right? They're people of risk. They take risks, no questions asked. Mm-hmm. But to arrive at that risk, to really become one of the best at what they do, if you really read about these individuals, they're extremely reflective people. They're people that take their time. They look at things the right way. They see it from 10 different angles around them. And then they make a decision based on that to say, this is what I'm going to do. And they stick with that choice.
And I think that's the hardest thing, sticking with that choice. Like, we've said this countless times on our podcast. I think you said it in the last episode that we were on, and it was something along the lines of, you can't look at where the guy is now. You have to look at where they were at your age, like in that time space, right? And then there's also that aspect of like, it's not next day delivery. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what those guys do. And I saw someone talking about it on, it was a YouTube video, but they were talking about how you can't look at guys like LeBron James and stuff like that. It's an interesting thought, but you can't look at them because his point was they are not like everybody else.
No.
And I think in the sense of like, yes, natural talent, skill, all that for sure, but you can easily piss that away if you're not consistent with your work ethic. Like, there was also another guy that he was talking about. I forget what the video was.
Sure.
But he was also saying it's better to look at this one guy who just grinded through high school, who wasn't necessarily the most talented, but he grinded to work there, and that's a better role model than someone else. I think what we can do, instead of looking at the natural talent side, is look at the work that goes behind maintaining and earning that respect for that individual. Like, the practice and the work and all the hours that go into it, I think that's what we can take away, as opposed to the natural talent, the gifted talent, or even the stuff that people are like born into sometimes, because that's a thing, right? People are born into it and all that stuff, but it's like, what's that work to maintain it, you know?
So that's a great point, because the born intos we're looking at, like, so I'm assuming you're talking about like the kids of a LeBron James, the kids of a person with a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, like that stuff, right?
And there's some that come out in that sense, and it's like, yeah, some, like I said, you can piss away great talent and stuff that you're born with. You really can, if you don't know how to maintain it. And I think that's where we got to look to if you're going to be that role model and stuff like that, right?
So here's a funny part. I'll challenge you on one thing. You said born with talent. Do you think it's a born thing or a built thing?
I think it's born into an environment where you have the example of what it means to be like great. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And sometimes you don't, like, people just grow up and are in that environment, even if they're not, overly successful parents or anything like that, but they have those examples that they can look at.
Okay. Here's what I'll say to that. I think that's a great actually analogy. So you're saying that the natural talent comes from the environment of, essentially. Right?
What you're exposed to, yeah.
Of course. So this is great because I don't know if anybody has, I'll employ anybody listening to this podcast to, I'll put it on you to go do it. I would love to know what LeBron James was doing between the ages of 0 to 7 years old, even 0 to 10. Because you look at a lot of these pro athletes now, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, all these guys who had legacies that they've created for themselves.
Yeah, and came from nothing, right?
Came from nothing, but there's so if you look at all of them, there's a point in their childhood. So you got to remember something. Self-esteem is built usually for females between the ages of 0 to 7, and that influence you're having. For males, they're finding around 0 to 10. And there's conflicting arguments to say, oh, it's only 0 to 7, 10, whatever. But take it for what it is, right? Let's say 0 to 7 years old, just to go with it. In all of these greats, though, if you read their stories, truly read their stories, there is something happening, to your point, between that 0 to 7 years old, where their environment or whatever, they are in an environment of constant repetition, right? So let's look at this for a second. So Lionel Messi, if you go read his biography and his book that was written about him, his mother tells stories about how he used to play in the streets of Argentina and try to beat his brother from the ages of 4 years old onwards. And he was losing consistently from 4 years old plus, and he could never beat his older brother.
Right.
And it's so now we look at a Messi and say, well, that kid was naturally talented. When really that kid was putting, they were saying sometimes up to 8 hours a day, he was staying on the street and working on his skills.
Right.
But again, 0 to 7 years old. Let's look at Michael Jordan. Born into a family, to your credit, that environment, has older brothers, older siblings, always competing with them. And it's wow, Michael was born with this competitive edge. It's or was it developed through that environment? There are multiple, countless stories about how he used to compete with his brothers.
So maybe in that sense, maybe it's not the fact that it has to be the most competition, but maybe it's some sort of competition to then light that spark. Not the highest level.
Well, not even well, I'll even argue that. I think it's an environment of consistent repetition you're in, right? So Messi, consistently, even though he's losing, consistent repetition with his brother. Michael Jordan, consistent repetition with his brother. Cristiano Ronaldo, right? Cristiano Ronaldo is the king, goat of work ethic, not horse, but the goat of work ethic, right? A guy that used to work, that they would talk about as a kid and still does so into his late 30s as he's playing the sport. Kobe Bryant grew up watching his father play basketball. He even said it. He goes, I wasn't good at basketball when I was younger. I wasn't great until I started peaking in my teenage years. And he's there was one summer, I think he tells a story at 12 years old or 11 years old, he didn't get 1 point in his entire summer season. And it's you look at a kid like Kobe who was moving with his father, going to Italy when his father was playing basketball and all that. But you look at that and it's there's another example of a guy who's born into an environment, like you're saying, of not the best of the best, but of an environment where you have to work to figure it out in some way.
Yeah.
And that really it's funny to go with this because we'll get back into the topic of slowing down, but this whole side on talent and born natural talent, with the exception of genetics and height and stuff like that, I really do believe, you can call me naive or whatever you want, but I believe there's so many people that can become like a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, whatever they want.
See, but that's where I think it comes back to what we're talking about in the high performance slowing down. That's where it's again, regardless of if you were born into it or not, like we were talking about, that is years of commitment and consistency. Not even performing at your best, but preparing at your best.
And there's all this stuff too on genetics. So everybody talks about it. One of the shortest players in the history of pro basketball in the NBA, who wins the slam dunk contest, Spud Webb, right? 1986. About 5'7", winning the dunk contest. That even there goes to show okay, is it but a guy like Spud figured it out. So is it the fact that we always talk about some people don't have that resilience and that ability to find a way or make one to do it? But it's again, with this talent thing, like I always hear people say, oh, it's unrealistic to think like a LeBron. It's like, okay, fair. Like I'm not going to question that there are some advantages he has when it comes to genetics. Not even close. But I will argue too that a Spud Webb at 5'7" winning the NBA dunk contest,
and
it's a different animal.
Who's the Italian goalie? Dino Zoff.
Dino Zoff.
Dino Zoff. He ate Nuna's eggs, and that's what made him
8 eggs a day.
Jump.
So like, look at him. His height, pulling it up here, 182 meters. So let's see what that is. 1.82 meters. 1.82 meters in feet is only 5'9".
Oh, my height then.
Yeah, okay. and this man was able to jump. but like, let's look at when Dino Zoff made it. I think Dino Zoff went pro at not till later in his career. Like, I'm pretty sure he was working as a mechanic up until a certain age or something like that. And like Dino Zoff came in late.
Oh yeah,
he wasn't young. Yeah, but it's like that's what we're talking about again. This persistence,
right?
This resilience to just find a way. Then he gets into a lower level team. Then a higher team like Juventus sees him. He gets bought out. Then he becomes one of the top Italian goalkeepers ever. I mean, I'm not arguing that LeBron James has superior genetics. I'm not arguing that. What I am arguing, though, is this thing behind natural talent. I think a lot of people say, I'm born with a gift. And I believe in people being born with fantastic things. I do believe, though, what you take an interest in as a child early on is what ends up ultimately becoming your quote-unquote natural talent. Right? Like, when I was young, even doing the job that I do, I loved playing Monopoly as a kid.
Fair.
I loved playing soccer as a kid. I loved playing this game with my cousins called Spin, Spend, Sell from the age of like 10 years old when they first started bringing it over as a kid. And it's like, I worked my face off loving the sport of soccer and had a quote unquote talent at that. Now I have a talent at running a business, quote unquote. Now I have a talent at talking to people, quote unquote. And it's like, it wasn't though. Like, I really look at it. I was one of the most conversational people in our family at a young age.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to say.
Right? But it kind of comes back to that point Chris was mentioning, this whole thing behind environment. I think that's actually a very interesting key to look at. Is this part of like a competitive, developmental focused environment at a young age?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be looked into with that. And there probably is. I just haven't seen recent studies on it, if you want to call it that. But like, that's a very interesting topic, I think, to be discussed in depth in another time.
Well, and coming back to this, I don't think it's overstimulation. I think it's competitive environment at some points, and then also, backing off. Mm-hmm. Like again, a young Leo Messi. He was okay for sure. He was out there 8 hours a day. I'm sure it wasn't all soccer all the time, all football all the time. It was, let's go mess around doing something else.
Figure it out.
As well, right?
And you know what? This is what I actually wanted to talk about too with overstimulation. So Chris and I have an athlete that we work with within our company. And he's a player that he's really eager to learn. And please understand, by me saying this, I'm not taking away anybody to go learn. I'm fully employing it. Mm-hmm. Like, I think learning and development is the key to riches in life. However, here's the problem I've noticed. When it comes to overstimulation, there's this stupid thing called social media.
The algorithm.
Right? And it's like, you look at this all, and the problem I see with high performers is there are so many people bombarding them with BS. Right? Try this. Now wear the ring. Now wear the wristband. Now watch your sleep. I was actually reading a great article on this recovery person, an athlete we used to work with, who used to get anxiety because they were getting 7.68 hours of sleep a night instead of the 8 recommended. And it's like, that's what I'm talking about with overstimulation. Now, without the wristband and all that stuff, would they feel good? Probably. Probably wouldn't even know. But you look at this, and the problem I'm seeing with a lot of high-performing individuals, they're taking advice from just anything and anyone.
Well, there was another thing came out. So the Apple Watch, and there was a bunch of other ones, Samsung, like a bunch of ones in there. But the estimation, they were overestimating, I think the number was by 46%, how many calories you were actually burning in a workout.
There you go.
So for anyone that was really going hard with the Apple Watch or just calorie counting in general, apparently it was overestimating how many calories you were burning by 46%. And I know some of those guys that go hard with the sleep and all that stuff. And like, it's fine, but like in your face all the time. Because then what? To me, that gives you an excuse of, I had a bad game because something said I wasn't this. And you're already going into a performance without even having kicked a ball, touched the ice, doing anything, thinking I'm already behind. When it's like, okay, so you wake up a little tired. I've woken up tired on game days. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's been a lot of people that have woken up tired on game days. But like, figure it out.
Yep.
You're there to figure it out.
I was going to say, I think I just wrote this down. I think where this gets dangerous. So I'm a big proponent of tech. I think tech is great. I think tech is great though as a tool to help. I think once tech gets to a point that it's trying to create perfection, which is what these things, like, let's be real for a sec. That's what this stuff is trying to do.
Yeah.
I know everybody preaches it as a tool. Like, let's talk straight for a second. Everybody preaches these wearables as something that helps me. Really, what these wearables are doing is aiming for perfection. If there is one thing I have learned from working with the individuals we have, from a Lauri Markkanen who took 3 years, from a team that wrote him off almost at 23 years old, to an NBA All-Star, that word perfection doesn't even come close to his vocabulary.
Well, perfection with imperfect devices.
Yep.
And because like that's hard to...
But this is where it's dangerous, man. This is where it's dangerous. This is the shit that I hate when it comes to it, because it's like, I look at this and this is really what gets me heated. It's making excuses based on an imperfect device, like you're saying. And it's giving excuses to people based on that. It's like, but isn't there a range for sleep instead of a specific number? Or even with it, it's like, there are so many environmental factors that have to get taken in.
And now, like with all these things coming into the sports world and stuff like that, on a hockey team, how many players on a hockey team? 20 in a lineup?
Yeah, 23. Well, in a lineup, 23 usually on a roster.
Okay, 23 on a roster, and you got 23 guys thinking of all that stuff. And you're going to have some guys that are feeling great, some guys that are not feeling great on any given day. And it's like just an added thing that goes into it.
Well, even with that, man, and it's like...
And even changes from period to period.
Yeah. Period to period. And on top of that, too, it's like... That's what we're talking about with overstimulation. Because then you see, this is the funny part too, where social media becomes a little dangerous for this. And I'm not shitting on social. Like, it's good. It is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. But then you've got the experts who use these devices, who have their own opinions, who go and promote subjective advice based on what they're doing with these things. And bringing it back to the mental side that we have to deal with a lot when it comes to this stuff is like, now mix this in with 20 to 23 players who are getting thousands of people, or well, let's say what they realistically look at, probably 10 to 20 people's different perspectives subjectively on this stuff.
On social media?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now they're overstimulating with like, should I do this? Should I do that? Like, we get it down with athletes that are like, hey man, I'm doing the visualization that we just started, but I just saw there's a way to do it this way, this way. It's like, shut out 90 days. Just shut out the noise. Shut out the noise. Chris and I even had, and maybe he's tuning in, but we had an athlete that we completely shut off from social. And it's like, why? It's like overstimulation, man. You want to see, this is what kills me about this. You look at artists, right? Real, like musicians and artists and painters and all this stuff. They grasp inspiration and then go to work.
Writers as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They grasp inspiration, they note it down, and they go to work. What are they not doing, though? Obsessing over these numbers and things on social media and so on and so forth. They're not doing that. And the reason we're saying, like, slow down as high performers, overstimulation is a big issue. If you're somebody who's trying to get something done and really going after a goal, I'll never forget this. A billionaire friend that Chris and I have, he said to me, I said, so how do you run these businesses? Like, you must be constantly learning. He goes, Matt, I have 7 books that have got me to where I am in the business world. Completely got me to where I am in the business world. He goes, I've stuck to those now for close to 20 years, and I focus on those. He goes, the only quote unquote stuff I'm reading are news articles throughout the day to see what kind of opportunities I have in the world to help it and better it and solve problems. And that's how this guy starts businesses. And he goes, and I read philosophy. from philosophers. He goes, I'm not picking up the newest book on social media or whatever. He goes, I have a team for that. I don't need to concern myself with that. I am good at what I do as a CEO and a founder of companies and a board member and so on because I know what I need to know. And I would highly suggest athletes take on this type of mentality as well, where it's, these are the things that matter. This is my team. I'm going to put them to work and let them do it. Because the moment that it becomes something where the athlete and the high performer is looking at all these things, they can't slow down. They can't. Now, on another side, because this is a point that we wanted to talk on too, if you are an athlete who is not working with some kind of self-reflective, self-aware mechanism, you need to start immediately. Because this is where you're going to gain a lot of your own personal insights. Like, you don't need somebody to tell you all the time. It's good to have a coach that you can reflect with, or a parent that can help you reflect and so on. But when you reflect, you need to rip those insights out, man, and you need to put them into play. Like, the quickest way to getting to the top, I found, is to test these different things continuously and learn quicker than you do succeed. Right? So it's like, you try a new thing in performance. Maybe this is a part of my game. You realize it doesn't work for you. Boom. You try another way. But getting to the point of that, the quickness to get to the point of this doesn't work for me is really where the key lies, I found.
Yeah, because then you can cancel it out.
Cancel it out. You move forwards. You find another way. You build another skill. But the problem is like, people are so they move so fast, man, high performers, that they don't take a second to look at it and be like, if I just shift this slightly, that can actually work. And that's what you have to realize as a high performer. It's not these massive gaps you're closing. It's inches.
And I think bringing it back to the social media side, because that's what consumes our lives now. I think that's where social media, like, because everything we see online, even the stuff that we're going to put out there, they're clips of a long conversation.
Yes.
And it takes a long time sometimes to get to that one little 5-second, 10-second moment, right? All the stuff that you see on social media, it then seems like it's, if I do this, I'm good. Mm-hmm. If I do this, I'm good. If I do this, I'm good. And it feels like, okay, this is my answer. I apply it and it's done. When in reality,
it's not how
that
it works.
answer might be 2-3 weeks long.
Yeah.
You know?
Employing the skills.
Yeah. So it's like, you see all these quick fixes, but it's just perceived as quick fixes because these clips that you do see, it's 30 seconds long.
Well, and let's go to the other side too, though, with this, which is with, and it actually mixes the first point too of overstimulation. Let's look at the parent who doesn't take the time to reflect, right?
Yep.
So a lot of times we see players or athletes who go get injured. They go and find, quote unquote, the best X amount of people in the area to do this kind of rehab work and blah, 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 blah. And they bring in all of these experts. And now there's 7 different people with 7 different viewpoints, with 7 different ways of helping the athlete return from injury. It's funny, man. Like, so major shout out to our one guy, DJ Reed. I will never forget when that guy tore his pec coming into the 2020-2021 season of the NFL. Okay? Tore his pec. He did a fantastic job, actually, and shout out to his agent, AJ, at Vayner Sports. They did a fantastic job with him of saying who's going to lead this rehab and exactly what has to be done on this team. Found the team, found the 3-ish people that had to do it, and everybody reported to that one guy who was in charge of getting him back to where he needed to be within so many weeks. I love that. Like, that right there to me, that could be this entire podcast. That is the key to slowing down. Mm-hmm. There were weekly meetings, talk about what has to get done, measure progress, go to the next week. Boom, slowed it down. Versus what the majority do. They bring in a bunch of experts, everybody's working on their own page, and no proper solid rehab happens as a result. This is what we're talking about when high performers need to slow down, because it's not just with rehab. Take that exact scenario and apply it now to the in-season part. Let's say you're on a team. You got an assistant coach giving you this info, a head coach giving you that info, a parent giving you that info, a spectator news giving you that info, the media giving you this info. Then you as a player forget about everything that you need to do. You are the absolute captain of your friggin' fate, man, when it comes to this, and you need to take control of that if you're going to be somebody who reaches high levels at the sport that they're playing in or the business they're in. You need to take friggin' ownership and control of this, man. Because what I see is a lot of times with these, with high performers, they sometimes want to just pass everything off instead of really taking the time to say, this is where I want to go by this time. Can you help me get there?
Mm-hmm.
It's black or white.
Yeah. It's just getting clarity, right?
It is.
Like what is step 2 here? That's all.
Yeah. And that's why to Chris's point, like gaining clarity is why we're imploring athletes to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Do it. Slow down, man.
Because this is where you can gain clarity.
Yeah.
Like this is where you can look at, review the week. What went well? What didn't go well? Am I prepared going into, game day? Whatever the case may be. Slowing down does a lot for you. And again, not just for athletes, but business, students, anything. Parents, even anything,
man.
Like why was your kid yelling at you in kindergarten, not wanting to go to school?
Literally.
Is there a way that you can, figure that out a little bit?
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Like if you think right now, anybody who's tuning in, to any time you've been underperforming, I can guarantee you it's always come back to a place of clarity.
Oh, for sure.
Can guarantee it. You lacked clarity. Probably didn't feel as good as you wanted to feel. And as a result of that, you underperformed. You got confused. That's what happens. Like, I can't tell you how many calls we get between games of athletes who don't perform the way they want to one game, and then they jump to the next one. I can't tell you how many of these individuals on a 10-minute phone call, not even 5 minutes, it's like, did you do this? Yeah, I did. Okay, slow down. What's the one thing you think can get better? Really think about it. And they'll spit something out at you at first, and it's like, okay, show me how that's going to help. And then they go and reflect on that, and it's like, oh, actually, you know what? It's actually not that. It's this. And it's like, that's where the insight lies. But it's hard. Like to Chris's point. So we say it like this here at Molliteum. After every performance, doesn't matter what you're doing in life, you should be having some kind of a reflection period. Everything.
Investigate.
You had a business presentation. Ask yourself, why did it work? Why didn't it not? Okay. Find your reasons. Move on. A performance in sports. Why did it work? Why did it not? Even practices. Like I say this all the time, but daily reflection is key. Right? And I'm not asking you to write a Dear Diary journal of 10 pages long. I'm saying like 1 or 2 bullet points. Like think of that question I just asked. Was it a good performance? Yes. Why was it? Well, I really made sure to use my speed today. I got to keep doing that. Boom. 2 bullet points. Go do it. Do it again. Do it tomorrow. Or on the business side. It was a great performance today. Why? I gave a great presentation. Why? Because I really put my energy onto the audience and I found I need to keep doing that. That's a real insight for me.
Yeah. And you know what? To go again to the audience, to everybody that we're talking to, if you don't want to go so hardcore with this because maybe you're not at that point, that's fine. You don't have to reflect every single day. This could help out with just general relationships. Once every 2 weeks. Why was that a really terrible week with my boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever?
Yep.
And because like a lot of us, when we don't take the time to slow down, we just try to roll through situations.
Yeah, we do.
Where it's like you're making the same mistake over and over and over again. Why don't we spend 4 or 5 days in the mud trying to figure out this new skill? Because then once it's done, think 2 weeks of suffering or 4 to 5 days of hard work, you get past it. That 2-3 weeks doesn't have to happen ever again.
Well, I'll even argue, Chris, on one point. Anytime you learn a new skill or you're going through a new situation, in my opinion, you should have a higher frequency of reflection.
No, that's fair. I'm just saying, like, if you see the same mistake happening over and over again.
But like, let's situation it for a second. So let's pretend you are in a rough situation with your significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and you're going through it. As you're going through it, I would suggest a high level of reflection on a daily basis. As things get better, wean off.
No, for sure.
All right, keep it to once every 2 weeks. It's like performing in sports. It's like we do with players that constantly are, we keep working with on a year by year basis. It's like when you do your base program, it's high frequency touch points every single freaking day.
Mm-hmm.
As you come back and you start mastering your craft and you stay at that same level. So this is more for the pros than it is for kids coming through the ranks still, because they're always changing environments. But as you're at that pro level, the touch points are there, but they're measured differently. We might not have a 30-minute sit-down call with you every single week like we do with some of our guys that are just starting. We might be more focused on a 5-minute touch point every couple days, or maybe for some guys, it's a text message back and forth, right? But my point is with this all, the reflection has to start whenever you start something new. You need to be a master at slowing yourself down. And once you've got success at that level, you need to be a master at slowing yourself down to know what's bringing you success and to constantly keep innovating it. You have to. Now, that might come on a weekly basis when you're successful, or a bi-weekly basis, and that's fine. I suggest weekly. But when you're just getting into something and you're going through a bit of a time, you should be reflecting daily.
100%.
You should be. You should be slowing yourself down and asking yourself, what went well? How did I get better? Move forwards. What went well? How did I get better? Keep moving forwards. And it's like, if you can keep that, you will learn. Because like I said at the start of this all, you need to be better at closing that gap between what worked and what didn't than just success.
Yeah.
And that's what reflecting does. And that's how you perform at high levels. Otherwise, you're going to go through it, like Chris is saying, blissfully, rolling through things, making the same mistake over and over again, and then saying to yourself in this learned helplessness mode, oh my God, I can't, whatever I try really doesn't work. Do you know how many athletes too it's been, I think I would say, that we work with, that I've gotten where it's like, oh, Matt, I'm doing everything you're asking me to and it's not working. I had this last year with a guy who went on to get drafted in the NHL. He goes, oh, what we're doing is not working. I said, really? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, slow down. Let's really see this. Are you really working with intent at practice? Are you really working with intent at practice? No, it can be better. Okay, what would you rate that out of 10? A 6. Okay. You doing your mental reps with intent? Okay, what would you rate that? Like a 5. So there's like what this does is it allows you to assess your intention as you're going through it. And that's important. And it's like, again, going back to this all, I'm not asking you to be a journaler, because we are going to do an episode, by the way, on our YouTube channel about when athletes should journal. I'm not a big believer that every single person in this world should be journaling. I'm not. Just because it's a fad doesn't mean you need to do it.
Yeah, it's not, creedthoughts.org.
Yeah, exactly. It's not for
From
anybody
The
that likes The Office. But it's like, you don't just have to do this stuff because other people are doing it. Like I see these athletes too all the time on Instagram even. Another recovery supplement. Okay.
Yeah, but that's other things
like
too, right?
It is, but it's like, my God, man. Like at a point, it has to be like, these are great. This is great that you have all these supplements, left, right, center, all these reflective mechanisms. You're meditating, you're breathing, you're this, you're that, you're a guru. It's like, slow down. What are the 1 to 5 things that bring you the most return? Do those. And if you want to add on to those after because you feel like it, Godspeed, brother or sister. But just find the friggin' 5 things that bring you to your goals the most and do them consistently. That's how easy this is.
And I think those 5 things or 3 things or whatever the case may be, those things, it's what's going to earn you that respect, get you that reputation, and even help you get paid.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Even look at us with resilience in our programs, right? It's like we build 4 things in athletes: commitment, competence, focus, toughness. We don't waver. We have specific skills in each of them. If you break our program down into your own DIY program, we have 12 core principles we focus on, core resilience skills that we build. We don't waver. We literally, with any single athlete that we work with or high performer, can drop them into those 12 things and be like, what are they missing? Mm-hmm. And instantaneously, the moment we add those with them, there is an immediate change in performance. But it's like, we know our shit. We know our stuff. You're a high performer. You need to know your shit. You have to. You have to know your stuff, man. If you don't know what's bringing you success, slow down, because then you're changing things all the time. You're constantly clearing the board, and guess what? You're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. You're just finding ways. I used to be like this as a goalkeeper, and I can speak on this. I'll never forget. As a goalkeeper, I used to be a gearhead when I played soccer. Okay, when I was playing football, I would buy a new brand of gloves every friggin' half year. I started with Puma, then Adidas, then Nike, then Reebok, then New Balance, then back to this, then Under Armour when a goalie coach gave it to me, then some off-brand, then this, then that. And it's like, man, how do you find consistency in that? And I didn't. instead of finding what worked for me and just keeping them, then I remember at the tail end of my career, I used to, at the start of my career, I used to buy Puma because I loved a goalkeeper who wore Puma.
Yeah.
Right? As I ended my career, I was like, shit, it's Adidas that works. And guess what? I finished playing within 2 months. It's too late. But my point is like, figure your shit out, man. Like, if you're an athlete going through it right now and you're having a really tough time finding out what your problem is, I'm saying try this exercise, okay? Go back to a time that you were doing really well. Write down the things you were doing in performance. There's 1 to 3 things that you were doing really, really well. There's a maximum of 3. There's usually going to be 3. If you're some kind of whiz and there's 1 thing, by all means. But there's 3 things that you do well. Do not go past 3. Make them the 3 things that you are doing really well that allowed you to be successful. Okay? Then go write down the ways you were working. Maximum 5 things you were doing. Were you visualizing? Were you meditating? Were you journaling? Were you working on a specific skill? What 5 things were you doing max? You can't go over it. You got to cut out the other crap. Maximum what you were doing. Okay. Once you find those 5 things and you have those 3 things, here's the magic. Go do those 5 things throughout the week, and in performances, go do those 3 things. That's it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like that. That's literally what we do with guys that are going through, or gals that are going through hard times.
And if you all listening notice, it's very straightforward. It's not complex. We're not getting into, any crazy things that have happened to you in the past. It's simple and it's effective.
Yeah.
And it's something that you can do yourself. Sometimes all you need is just some clarity on what to do. And the clarity on what to do, that action, doesn't have to be some grand, massive thing. Oftentimes it's just simple stuff. Like, we're not here to complicate things.
No. And think of it too. Like, if you're just starting, let's say in a new, on a new process of getting what you want, or you starting a new target or a goal, like, a lot of people know what they want, but then they freak out on how to get it. It's like, just find out what your next move is.
Yeah.
Right? If it's like, so if you're starting a new business, okay. Do you have a product created? Yep. Great. Do you have a way to market it? Nope. Okay. Solve that. Done. You went on to a new team. Okay. Are you playing as much as you want? No. Okay. Let's solve for that. Do you know what your role is? Not really. Okay. Go find that out before you do anything else. Mm-hmm. What's my role on this team? Once you find out your role, next question becomes, how do I get better at that? What skills go into me doing this role successful? You don't need to have, I think this is where people too, because I hear a lot of this crap about like, oh, it's not about clarity. You don't always have to be clear. You just need a vision and a why, and don't worry about the how. People are scared about this how. It's like, yeah, you should be scared about the how if you're trying to call out what your next 20 million different moves are.
Yeah.
But like, you don't have to think further ahead than like, what's my next step?
You already know where you want to go. If you have that vision, you already know what the end goal is. It's just, okay,
find the next step.
What's the next step to get there?
Look at even how we've built this business, right? Like, guys, we started building a company that's focused on coaching.
And just by the way, going through it, that's how every company has been built from ground up. This is how it goes.
Right? And it's like, okay, Chris and I were asking ourselves, how do we work with bigger and better people? Make sure our programs are really good. Okay. Then we asked, how do we work with more bigger and better people? It's like, well, do we have a good way of marketing? Yeah. So we started the social media thing. Then it's like, okay, how do we make sure that our brand becomes now one of the more impactful ones in the environment? It's like, do you have a really good brand strategy? Oh, no, we don't. But that's all we keep doing. That's all we do with our athletes. And then it's like, well, how did they get to the All-Star game? It's like, well, we kept asking the question, what's next? What do we got to do next?
Yeah. Who do we need to talk to? Who's that person that's going to be able to give us that next step? Right?
Absolutely. That's all you need to do. Like Chris said, it's really, success is not hard. Sorry. Success is not complicated. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You shouldn't want it to be easy. But if you have a simple process to get there, you're going to be fine. And that's why with this, to wrap up this topic today, like, the key to high performance is slowing down, guys. That's it. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and get into this fad, that fad, this fad. And we're not shitting on people who are, using supplements or whatever. We're not talking about that. What we're saying is Find those core things and slow down. When you're going through it, it doesn't mean adding another layer. Going through it means usually reducing some stuff. That's what it means. New perspective, new viewpoint. Doesn't mean starting over.
And it also doesn't mean that you should never try something. It's just if you're going to do it, go do it for a month.
Yeah.
Like
try it full on.
If you have a full list of all the stuff that you want to try to do, put it down, cross them off one month at a time. But like give it the opportunity to actually succeed.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say to that too, though, like on Chris's point, just make sure to, I'll use the house analogy. Make sure your house is built before you start adding things onto it.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning, make sure you know those 3 things you do really well in performance and those 5 things that you need to work on to make yourself feel good walking into games or whatever it is, right? Or performances or, pitches or whatever you want to call it. But find out that that's your house. Once you've built that, then you can add on. Okay, I want to try this now. And like Chris is saying, go on those 30 things. Doesn't mean you completely go and break your house, that you destroy your house. It means you add one layer if you want. And you do it again. Think of LeBron James. I'm going to go back to him. LeBron James comes back every single year, the same kind of player, more consistently. It's not like he's adding millions of inches on his vertical. It's not like his game is changing. He might get a little sharper with a certain kind of shot, but he's still depending on those consistencies. Like study any great. Tom Brady. It's not like Tom Brady came back from an offseason running 100 meters at a different pace now. Like he didn't come back with explosive speed. If you go watch his combine videos, it's actually kind of funny, right? But it's like Tom Brady came back sharper with throwing a ball.
And I think what people have to realize too, the better you get, like after each season, the more opinions are going to be thrown your way on what you need to do. So taking that time to slow down, and I'll be honest, the first hurdle, if you are unknown yet in your sport, your business, whatever the case may be, the first hurdle of who you're going to get the most opinions from is going to be your parent.
Yep.
So slowing down also helps relieve some of that post-game interviews that you have with your parent. So like that helps as well.
Yes. And the other thing I'll say on Chris's point, if you are an athlete too, or somebody coming through it, you got to realize something. It's consistency behind skills that actually get you recognized.
100%.
Think like this is all, I was saying this, every athlete should read books on branding. You know that? Because becoming trying to get to a pro level or whatever, any person that wants to do something great, read a book on branding. Not because I'm saying you need to go build this brand, but my point is becoming great at something is the same process behind branding. In the moment, you usually don't notice a bunch of these small things like changing the messaging behind your branding, the colors, the images, the consistency. You notice it when you're getting invited to all-star games. You need to have the same approach that brands do, right? Consistency behind messaging, or in this case, your skills, and doing it day after day after day. And eventually people are like, wow, Chris scores a lot. We can bring him to the next level. Wow, Matt's really consistent with saving the ball. That's literally how I got to the pro level. Like I just became really consistent at saving the ball. So it's not to dumb things down or anything like that, but our point is it's a very straightforward process. You just got to go through it. So let's wrap this up because we've been talking a lot. Any final closing thoughts you want to leave everybody with?
No, other than find the simple solution and get ready to work on that action.
Yeah. And there's so many gems in this. We're going to try and cut it up to like we do in our social to put it out there so you get the main points. But to Chris's point, this is a long combo. There's a reason these are long combos because it teaches you, right? Take it for what it is. Don't cheat the process. So before we wrap it up, please like, subscribe. If you're tuning in on YouTube, click the notification bell, download the podcast anywhere that you're tuning in from. More downloads, the better for us. It helps us get the message across, makes us more popular, allows us to impact more people. And on top of that, it allows us to bring you more free content. If you want to work with one of our coaches, we'll have the links down below. You can apply to work with us one-on-one. Or if you want to do it yourself, there's also a link down below so that you can work with our Molliteum Pocket Coach. And if you're like, hey, I'm actually just here for the free stuff, we get it. then you want to subscribe to our newsletter, the Molliteum Insider, because there is where we're giving out free gems on resilience, how to train it, how to build it, how to apply it from business professionals to athletes. We're promoting stuff like our podcast, our YouTube show as well, and we're making sure to help a lot of people. So without further ado, thanks everybody for tuning in this week, and we'll see you all in the next one. Stay resilient.